find somebody who has what you want and ask them to show you what they did. And I mean that, like, not the person who has the Mercedes, the person who is comfortable in their own skin, who likes themselves. So interview people and find someone who has what you want and beat a path to their door.
It's time for the Share Recovery Podcast, where we bring you amazing life-changing success stories from addicts and alcoholics all over the world who share their inspiring journey in recovery. And now, here's your host, O.
Hello, my Share Podcast listeners. This is O. How you doing? Hope everybody's doing fantastic. Today, we have Veronica Valli joining us on the Share Podcast. And Veronica is the sober girl telling the world recovery rocks. Veronica has worked as a therapist specializing in addiction for over 10 years. She's got an amazing story and a very funny story. We laughed a lot in this interview. She's super funny and has an amazing personality. So I'm absolutely excited to jump into her story. But before we do, let's get into a little Share Podcast news. Okay, so first of all, I just want to thank the recent donations that we got from Marla, David, Kate, and Lewis. Thank you guys so much for helping support the Share Podcast by sending in your generous donations. And again, for those of you who would like to send in donations, go to the website. On the right-hand side, you'll see a yellow button. It says Donate via PayPal. Click on that, and you can see all the different options for making your donation. And also something new that I am just now getting involved with is In Recovery Radio. That is part of the Star Worldwide Networks in Scottsdale, Arizona. Once a month, I will be hosting an interview called The Ozone. And most recently, I interviewed Daniela Park on In Recovery Radio. And Daniela Park is the founder of Doing It Sober. If you want to check out that interview, I've posted the link to that interview on the Share Podcast private accountability group. And it will also be one of the bonus episodes on the Share Podcast labeled The Ozone, featuring Daniela Park, Doing It Sober. So look out for that episode coming real soon. Also, once a month, we do the Blab meeting. Michael Hilton, Stephanie Schilling, and myself do an online Blab meeting once a month. The next one will be on March 27th, Sunday, March 27th. So if you can, join us. If not, they are recorded, so you can go ahead and check those out. There's a button on the right-hand side of the website that also says Live Blab Meetings. Click on that, and that's where all the previous episodes are at. And something very cool happened last week. Today is March 1st, but on Friday, February 26th, my daughter became a teenager. She is now 13 years old. There's so much nostalgia that comes along with my daughter's birthday because when she was born, I got sober. I had a relapse shortly after she was born, and my last drink and drug was May 25th, 2003. So my clean date is May 26th. 2003, exactly 3 months after she was born. I haven't picked up a drink or a drug since. She's my baby, and she is the reason that I made the commitment to get involved in 12-step recovery and start going to NA meetings. And I'm so grateful for it because at first it was for her, but very quickly I realized that I had to do it for myself or it wasn't going to work. So she invited 6 of her friends and we took them to the movies and to have dinner. And it's one of these experiences in my life that just to watch her have such an amazing time with her friends and to think that 13 years ago, I was a complete and utter disaster with basically days of sobriety, with no job, no money, no self-esteem, no self-respect. And there I was with this brand new baby girl and not knowing what the hell I was going to do. My wife had left me. My business partners had kicked me out. And I had nothing. I had absolutely nothing. And for me to be there to celebrate her 13th birthday and to be able to give her this amazing life and to be present and to be her father and to be someone that she can be proud of is one of the most amazing blessings that I could ever ask for. So I'm so grateful. And I just wanted to share a little bit of of my life. Many of you that are connected with me on Facebook saw the photos and posted remarks, and it's so gratifying to be a part of such an amazing fellowship and an amazing way of life. It is possible. It absolutely is possible for anyone seeking recovery and wanting to be clean. You can have the life beyond your wildest dreams, even when you're at your absolute worst, rock bottom, and the only way out sometimes is the thought of suicide. And I was there. I was also there 13 years ago, where prior to me picking up my last key tag, thoughts of suicide were very, very prevalent in my mind. And that's not the case today. Today, I live in absolute gratitude. So I want to thank everyone in the Facebook group and all my wonderful network of friends and family in recovery. And if you want to be a part of that amazing Facebook private accountability group, you can type in SHAIR, share private group, or just email me, o@thesharepodcast.com, and we'll hook up on Facebook, and I'll plug you right into the private accountability group. And again, thanks everyone for all the amazing love and support that the Share Podcast receives on a daily basis. Keep the emails coming, stay connected, reach out to me so you can join the private accountability group. And now let's get into Veronica's story right after a message from our sponsor.
Sober Nation is the largest online recovery community and treatment resource center. They provide treatment resources to those struggling with addiction, as well as to the family members who are caught in the crossfire. On top of that, Sober Nation is a huge community of good people who share their experience with each other. They have informative content, recovery and addiction news, as well as an entire clothing line which helps expand the culture of recovery. They can easily be found at www.sobernation.com. Sober Nation is putting recovery on the map.
And finally, would you like to receive the most popular AA daily devotions free in one distribution? Transitions Daily delivers daily devotions from 24 hours a day, AA Thought for the Day, daily reflections, Big Book Quote, Just for Today, As Bill Sees It, plus more. You can get the daily distribution via email, private Facebook group, or Twitter. Go to dailyaaemails.com for more information. And don't forget to share dailyaaemails.com with friends, in meetings, and with sponsees in recovery.
Now back to the show.
Hi, O. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have you on the show today. How you feeling?
I'm feeling great. For once, I think I got enough sleep last night, so hopefully I shall make some sense.
Well, you sound fresh. You sound ready to go. All right. So, folks, today we have Veronica Valli joining us on the Share Podcast, the sober girl telling the world recovery rocks, and the author of Why You Drink and How to Stop, Journey to Freedom. So, Veronica, let's dive right in. Tell us about how your life is today, your routines, your hobbies, your daily routine, including recovery, and give us a brief overview of your website and your book.
Okay, so basically I'm a stay-at-home mom really at the moment.
Nice.
I have 2 young boys, 4 years old and almost 10 months, 2 miracle babies. So yeah, it's incredible how my life has changed. Because I'm 42, so I had my baby, when I was 42. So it was, quite late to all of this. And
is that why you call it the miracle baby?
Yeah, very much. Yeah.
Okay.
Real miracle to have both of them, really. So my life is really, I'm a housewife and I'm a stay-at-home mum. How the hell did that happen? It's still a shock to me. My day-to-day life is very much just, looking after my children and all of that kind of stuff. We just recently moved, trying to get organized. But in my old life, I was an addictions therapist for many years in the UK, in London. I had a practice in Harley Street and Cambridge, which I loved. I love being a therapist. And it's weird because I still identify, what do you do? I'm a therapist, but I actually haven't practiced since before my first son was born. So it's been a little while. I do hope to go back to it soon once my kids are sort of a little bit older.
Right.
But, I've been in recovery for a long time, like yourself, very passionate about that whole world. There's still so much work to be done. So my husband, many years ago, before we were married, just said, you just come out with the best stuff about recovery and drinking, you should write a book, and marched me to the table and made me write this book. And I sort of, just threw it together, and I found just the most amazing editor to work on it with me, because I'm really basically almost illiterate, and she really helped me make it into something that was actually readable, and I'll be eternally grateful to her. And we knocked it together and put it out there, and it's just done incredibly well. And I've been so incredibly touched by the people from all over the world who've emailed me and just got in contact somehow, just saying that it really helped them. And the reason I wanted to write it is I felt there was a lot of information in books about the sort of very practical side of drinking, but I didn't feel that there wasn't enough information about how an alcoholic thinks and feels. And the feedback I was getting is that I explained that very well. So I wanted to put that into a book so, more people could get that information. And, I'm not the science person. I don't even know what the legal drinking limit is. I couldn't tell you because I don't remember those kind of things. But what I can tell you is, and my book touches on this a lot, is, like, for instance, how alcoholism is really driven by fear, and, the fear of everything and the fear of nothing, and how that just gets completely out of proportion in us. And, therefore our drinking is only a symptom, and really we're just trying to manage that fear and internal condition that we were born with or we just grew into. So that's kind of really my passion, is the inside spiritual. If you don't take care of your insides, nothing else works in your life. So I wrote the book, and then the blog sort of came from that, and I love doing that because I just love interacting with people. And it's really great for me now that I am at home with my kids, that I do feel like I've at least got a foot in my industry and in my world with my people, because you are my people.
We are your people.
Yeah. And so, and just make these amazing connections. You're in Costa Rica, I'm in New York. It's amazing. So I've just got these, just built this network, and I just love this online world of recovery that I'm part of, just interacting with people. I'm just having a tremendous amount of fun with that, and it really keeps me sane. So I don't know, did that cover everything?
That covers everything. Everything. And so on the actual website, do you do interviews, or is it mainly just articles about, say, for example, artists, or about the opiate epidemic, or, so is it primarily that? Is it primarily information about addiction, or do you also do interviews on there?
Well, I write from a very specific point of view, and I'm not a natural born writer, I'm a therapist. So no, I don't write about the heroin epidemic, because lots of people do that really, really, really well. What I try and write about is, the post I just put up today was about my really pathetic suicide attempt and how I felt when I attempted suicide about 17, 18 years ago. And before that, it was about feelings and emotions in long-term recovery. Like, because I think that getting sober is the easy part. I think it's living with ourselves and how we feel that is the hardest thing to do. And that's what I see most people struggle with, is what's going on inside of them. So that's what I write about. And then I do an interview series, of which I will ask you to participate in at some point, called Recovery Rocks, which again sort of originated from just really getting fed up with all that's out there is rock bottom stories. And I really wanted to just have something that, like, just, you asked me about how my life is right now. I am the very blessed mother of 2 little boys, and I love that, and have a very domestic life. It's not probably very exciting. And it's kind of like, that's what happens when you get sober and you work on yourself. You just get a life, you pay your taxes, you get a house, you have relationships, you wipe your kids' bums. That's basically what happens. It's not, there is so much more than the rock bottom story. And I kind of wanted to just tell those stories. It's like, what is good about being sober? Because if it wasn't anything good about it, we wouldn't be doing it, would we?
No. And you're absolutely right. You're coming to people, especially newcomers, from a layman's point of view, in the sense of there's no technical jargon in here. It's just, here's my experience, and this is what I've learned over the course of my sobriety. And yes, there were some rock bottom moments, but here's how my life is today. And normalcy, I'm all about it today. I love my normal life.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. I wouldn't change a thing. That's what I like to portray or like to come across to people that are new in recovery, because it's always the same thing. My life's going to be boring now. And I go, it's going to be the furthest thing from boring. It's going to be a whole new, wonderful experience. It's all new moving forward, because you're going to get new tools. Should you choose to take, the path that many of us have, which has allowed us to deconstruct the old person and reconstruct a new person. So, you know what you're talking about, and definitely what you just said about the article where you talked about your failed suicide. I definitely want to hear about that in your story. So let me just ask you a few more questions, and then I'm going to let you loose to tell your story. So first, how do you maintain your spiritual condition, that conscious contact with a higher power?
Well, what really turned things around for me, and I had a rock bottom in recovery, and I guess I can cover that in my story, is having discipline, a spiritual discipline. All that really is. All this stuff really scared me when I first heard it in early recovery, about meditation and prayer and all this kind of I thought, oh God, you have to get up at 5 a.m. and meditate for 3 hours and all, I'm just not good at any of those kind of things. A spiritual discipline is really, all I do is something positive for myself in the morning and the evening. So really what that contains, and this is really the vital part, is an inventory, is a way of looking at myself and revealing myself to myself. So I just constantly need something to check my balance, and because we just get in the way of ourselves, and then we can't really see what's real and what's not, because our feelings are all up, and we're in righteous indignation or resentment or fear, and we can't really see. And I still, after all this time, from time to time, need a specific tool that enables me to cut through all of that, to actually see what's really going on and what I should do. And that has been transformational for me, is really revealing myself to myself, what it actually revealed. And here is, if you take nothing from tonight, this is what you should take, is nothing is personal. And that changed my life, understanding that. Nothing's personal. What you do, what you say, just never, ever had anything to do with me. And I used to interpret the whole world as everything personally. If you did that, that was because of what, it's all to do with me. And it's just incredibly liberating once you get to that point where you realize nothing is personal. But I have to use a structured process to enable that to happen. So since I've had children, my life has been certainly a lot more chaotic. I mean, you just can't do things when you want to do them because your children need you. So
right.
My discipline has changed, and I found it still works as long as I just fit in my day, just a couple of minutes for me to just center myself and just kind of have a look at myself. That works equally as well. So discipline and inventory are the two most important things to my recovery.
So like a 10-step.
Yes.
Okay,
yeah,
beautiful.
A 10-step.
Got it. And how much clean time do you have, and when is your anniversary date?
I got sober May 2nd, 2000. I'm like 15 and a half years, coming up to 16 years. So I was sort of 5 months after the millennium New Year's Eve.
Awesome. I love it. And how old were you the first time you drank or used drugs? And more importantly, how did they make you feel?
Well, I think I was around 14 or 15. I'm British, obviously you can tell. And in England, the drinking age is 18. Now, when I was a teenager, which is back in the 80s, you never really got ID'd. I don't ever remember being ID'd anywhere. And as a woman, as a girl, if you just, looked old enough, you always got served. So I was going into bars at 15. And I was born an alcoholic because the moment I drank alcohol, it was the first time I felt comfortable in my own skin. It was the light bulb just went on. I just felt absolutely brilliant. It just totally worked for me.
Yeah. It's a very reminiscent story to so many of us. All right, Veronica, it looks like you're all warmed up. So I'm going to turn this show over to you. It's time for you to share your story, the battle against drugs and alcohol, the wreckage it caused in your life, when you hit rock bottom, and finally your journey into recovery up until today. So Veronica, take it away.
Okay, thank you. I'll do my best. So I think I said that I was born an alcoholic. And I was born an alcoholic because I just, from when I was just very, very small, I had a very, very strong feeling that there was something wrong with me. I remember I have this specific memory when I was about maybe 5 or 6, lying on the bathroom floor and really, really still, and kind of thinking, if I lie really, really still, I'll disappear and everything will stop and it will all be okay. And I remember my mother like coming in and looking at me, and her face kind of froze in horror, because in that kind of second that she saw me, I know she kind of had that like, this is not right.
Right.
And I just remember that feeling from a young child. And it's just so classic. I'm sure everybody's been on your show has said something very similar. Just didn't feel good enough. Didn't fit in. Didn't like myself very much. And felt very, very frightened. A huge fear of, will I be liked? Will I be loved? Am I good enough?
Yeah.
And, the binge drinking problem in the UK is so out of control and has been for decades now. To not drink, you look like in England, if you're a young person, to not drink, you're looked at as if you have 2 heads. So, drinking alcohol is just inevitable. And it's not just drinking alcohol, getting drunk is, inevitable. And that's what I did. And I absolutely loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved how it made me feel. I loved going out. I loved getting ready to go out. I just felt so alive because I just felt so dead inside, I think. I just loved it. And I have this memory of, again, I think it was about 15, and I was out with a friend, absolutely off my face, in a pub. And the pub was owned by the people I used to babysit for, the mother's brother. And there was a lock-in, which is common in England back in the day because the bars used to close at 11. So they would close the curtains, lock the door, and you could stay drinking till after hours. And I remember that classic kind of sitting there and the room was spinning and I just thought I'm going to be sick. And sort of getting up and knocking a table over and a chair and trying to find the door and finding the door and just making it outside into the gutter and throwing up absolutely everywhere. And just laying in the gutter.
I remember those days.
Oh, God. Covered in vomit, and the landlord threw a bucket of water over me.
Oh.
And I just look back and I think a 15-year-old child lying drunk in the gutter covered in vomit and water. There's just something so horrifyingly wrong with that. But it just didn't occur to me that wasn't... I did what I think all of us do, is that terrified me, so I spun it into that was a cracking night out, must do that again, filed it under, in my brain, filing system, great night is just drinking as much as you can, and hey, whatever happens. And off I went, and I don't think the people I babysat for asked me back after that. And I remember feeling ashamed and avoiding them and kind of knowing that but none of those things registered, when you are born with that hole in your soul that I was, none of that stuff matters. All that matters is changing how you feel. That's all that matters. I left home at 16. I'd already started taking drugs then, recreationally, cannabis, LSD, a lot of hallucinogenics around at that point, and had an absolutely brilliant time taking drugs and alcohol till I was almost 18. And then I had a panic attack while I was under the influence of magic mushrooms. And I went into drug-induced psychosis. I now realise I didn't know that at the time. I thought I'd gone insane. And I was hearing and seeing things, and I couldn't sleep, and I was too terrified to tell anybody. So I was just breaking inside with fear and insanity whilst pretending I was fine. I lived with a bunch of friends and my boyfriend at the time, I think, and I was going to college, and I was having about 20 panic attacks a day. I couldn't get on a bus. I couldn't sit in a lecture. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. And I didn't know what to do. And this went on for weeks, months. And I just I kind of lived with and, hung out with people who got off their faces. So maybe people didn't notice. I don't know. Eventually I went to the doctor, sort of more or less told him what was happening. He prescribed me Valium and a bunch of other prescription drugs, which were great because they helped a bit. And that sort of took the edge off things. And the panic attacks reduced, but I had panic attacks on an extremely regular basis up until the first few months of my sobriety. I would say, when I talk about fear, I was never frightened. I lived in absolute blind terror. I think I had so much pride. I just couldn't tell people that I wasn't coping. Back then, I don't remember ever seeing I think there's a strong message now. Like, we have the internet, we didn't have it then, but, get help. I mean, there is that message. It is out there.
Absolutely, yes.
I don't think it was when I was going through all this. I just don't. I mean, I just went to my doctor. I mean, that's where you go. I mean, so I just sort of had this life where there was an enormous internal and external incongruence. What was going on the outside was not what was going on in the inside. And I kind of just began a journey of trying everything to be normal. I was 17 when that happened. I was 27 when I got sober. So I had 10 years of trying to get better and get help, and lots of crazy things. I was very much under the impression that if I got into the right relationship, the right relationship would save me, which, again, I think is very common. But at that point, I was extremely insecure and had extremely low self-esteem. So would basically go out with anybody. And, obviously that just never went well. Extremely fucked up people don't make the best.
Yeah, you can.
Is it okay swearing?
Oh, fuck yeah.
Sometimes I can't help it.
I don't know. On my iTunes, it says explicit. So no.
Oh, good.
We're drug addicts, man. You know what I mean? For us not to cuss is unnatural.
I went to a 12-step meeting recently, and they say, please refrain from using any profanity. And I'm thinking, for fuck's sake. British, everybody swears in England.
Oh, I go to those meetings and I'm like, where am I?
Yeah, God. So, yeah, I lived this life of quiet desperation, lots of geographicals. I went to Key West, Florida when I was 19 and just thought, wow, this is where the party is. Because that's really the sort of holy grail of every alcoholic and addict, isn't it? It's like we're convinced there's a really good party.
Yeah.
Happening somewhere where
Absolutely.
We're not.
Yep.
Well, let me tell you, it's in Key West. And I spent many years sort of back and forth all over the place, traveling and just being in London and just being, running away, very good at beginnings and endings, not very good at middles, here I am, let's party. Oh, I'm leaving, let's party, but not able to sustain anything, always leaving before sort of, everything went really bad, would always get out just in time, and sort of periodically went to the doctor, got referred to psychiatrists and psychologists, got diagnosed with anxiety and depression, all that jazz, and lots of prescribed medication, antidepressants, all that stuff. Just, things would sort of be all right for a bit, and then they wouldn't be, and it was just sort of that head above water type thing, I mean, I always feel like I was kind of very quietly suicidal for many years, but I really didn't want to die. I really, really, really believed, and maybe this is what saved me, I really did believe that life was meant to be enjoyable and full and fulfilling. I really did believe that. My problem was I didn't know how. Right. I didn't have the how bit. I'd look at people. One of the things I write about on my blog, stuff I want to talk about because I don't think it gets talked about enough is, for instance, loneliness. I was just so fucking lonely. I mean, the isolation, the just dying inside through loneliness. And that's such a common experience. And people don't say that or talk about it. And I was a young girl and I was just so lonely. I couldn't really form sustainable relationships or connections with people. I'm an extrovert. I really want to be in the thick of things. So I would sort of have moments being all right and sort of be in the thick of things, have a panic attack and be like, oh shit, go away, stop looking at me, run. And then, be embarrassed and ashamed of what did I say? What did I do? And I'm not even talking about when I'm drunk. I'm talking about like, I'd be in a situation and feel fine, and I'd have a panic attack and I'd have to leave, and I'd make some ridiculous excuse up and not, meet my responsibilities or obligations or whatever, and tell all these ridiculous lies. And I just feel so ashamed of that whole scenario. My world and life got smaller and smaller.
Yeah.
I was always trying to, I do have this natural extrovert personality, so I was always kind of trying to go beyond that, but was really disabled. It's so funny talking about it because it's like talking about another person, and I think such empathy and compassion for that girl, and how desperate she was and how lonely and frightened she was. And I just, I know that there's someone out there right this minute who feels exactly the same way.
Yes.
Hopefully they'll listen to this or one of your podcasts and not feel so alone. I love it, when you just kind of hear people's stories and you hear those just like fabulous, like people's like drinking drug stories, and you're just like, you're just crying with laughter. They're so funny, and you just can't believe these people are alive. I just don't have it. My drinking and using was just so pathetic. And, I was just this girl from a small town in Norfolk who would drink, do cocaine, fall over and wake up and want to kill herself. That's basically what happened. I'm actually really grateful to cocaine. I think cocaine saved my life.
Yeah, same here.
Really?
Yes, I have the same story. Cocaine saved my life.
Saved my life, yeah.
Yeah. No, this is your story.
Yeah. I'm not sure. How old are you, O?
I'm 45.
Oh, there you go. So we're the same age group. So I don't think that really our age group or anyone coming behind us does not get exposed to drugs now. I mean, that, I certainly know people, older alcoholics in recovery who, they just used alcohol. I mean, it's so prolific, and cocaine is the perfect drug for alcohol, is it not? I mean,
yes. There's no question about it. When I discovered it,
Yeah.
It was like, I couldn't believe I had spent so much time in my life without it.
And it just, I loved it because of the way it makes you feel, but it enables you to drink longer.
Yes.
I mean, I'm done by, 11:30 midnight. I'm too drunk to do anything. But with cocaine, I can carry on to 4 or 5 a.m.
Easy.
Yeah. So I would, party. And I remember so many times, waking up and just feeling like somebody had scraped my soul out, and it was on the floor next to me. And I would wake up not knowing how I was going to live through the day because my insides just hurt so much. I felt, I know you know what I'm talking about, that desperate horror.
You couldn't have described it better. Like the way you just said it, I've never even said it in those words, but that's exactly how I felt. Like Satan had scraped, like just every ounce of humanity out of me.
Yeah. It just the most hideous feeling. And then I'd remember maybe the next night being in the bar, and before going out, I'm just going to drink, I'm not going to use, I'm just going to drink. And somebody would always have cocaine, and I would be in the toilets, and it would be there on the mirror, and I would look at it, and I would think, I know how I'm going to feel in 12 hours. I know exactly how I'm going to feel in 12 hours if I do this. And I could never stop myself.
Nope.
I just couldn't stop myself because I just didn't care, because I wanted to feel how I knew it was going to make me feel for the 12 hours before it made me feel like I wanted to die. And so I honestly think without cocaine, I could maybe still be out there. It brought me down so quickly and so far and so hard. And I was so desperate. It just finished me off. And I'm quite lightweight, I've discovered through being around. I am really quite lightweight. Honestly, I'm not. I just really don't have the tolerance for the amounts that a lot of my peer group seem to. It just got me straight away, and I was desperate, and I was scrambling around for help. And I met somebody. Oh, no. I did meet somebody who was sober, but before that, so this is the insanity. So because of the panic attacks, I couldn't do a job that involved, like I couldn't do a presentation or be in a big office with lots of people. I just couldn't do that. I was okay one-to-one. I just couldn't be with a lot of people. So in my insanity, I decided I would be a therapist. Because clearly I had a lot more.
Oh my God.
And it was a one-on-one job.
This is what you were using?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it. See, I love where this is going already.
So I thought that is honestly how these things happen. So I started a college course whilst I was still drinking, using. I mean, I was one of those, I've never been fired from a job. I've never been arrested. I've never had to drink driving, none of the yets happened to me.
Right.
Just about, by the skin of my teeth, escaped all of those horrific consequences so many people have. Always managed to function on some level. So started this course that was an addictions counselling course, and, sort of sat there after a few weeks going, and it was pretty much everybody in the class was in recovery. And I was like, that's interesting. So this is the weirdest thing. So that's going on. And I'm kind of thinking, things. And I always knew something was wrong with me. Like, I knew I had a problem. I absolutely knew 100% something was wrong with me. But I thought it was a rare mental health problem. I honestly, because I drank like my peer group drank, I just thought that was normal. Maybe I did drink too much and probably cocaine wasn't a good idea, but I really didn't think that was a problem. I really thought an alcoholic was a smelly old man on a bench, and I was so far away from being a smelly old man on a bench. I didn't think I was old enough. I didn't think I was qualified, and I didn't drink every day either. I never had to detox myself from alcohol. I used something every day, even if it was prescription drugs, but I never drank every day. I was a binge drinker. My tolerance was so bad. I needed at least 2 or 3 days to just recover. I'm so highly allergic to it. I remember going to this event with my boyfriend at the time, and it was an event where you had to buy tickets to get food and drink. And I changed our money, got tickets, and went to this event, had a few glasses of wine, got a bit drunk, and some things happened, and I don't know how they happened. I liked my boyfriend, but somehow I ended up breaking up with him. And I wasn't really even sure why I did that. And I left the event, and I still had some tickets for wine, which is unheard of. And I got home and I had these tickets. I didn't drink everything that I could have drunk. Like, what the fuck? And the next day, I just woke up and thought, I'm not going to drink today. And that turned into a week. I think it turned into 2 weeks. Now, if you drank and used like we do, you just feel shit most of the time. You're either, hungover, just about okay before you sort of go off in another bender, and you're always tired and cranky and all that kind of stuff. So kind of 2 weeks not drinking or using any drugs, I just felt brilliant. I was like, wow, blimey, this is amazing.
What a concept.
Yeah. And I was doing this course, and I thought, well, obviously, I need to go to some of these 12-step meetings to see what these poor folk I'm going to be helping are like. Bless them. I'll go along, pat them on the shoulder, let them know I'm almost qualified, and, So eventually I went to a 12-step meeting and sat there and saw a bunch of smelly old men. And I have no idea why I went back. Absolutely no idea. And I went back again, and I think it was partly, as soon as I stopped drinking, I only had fair weather friends. So all of a sudden I didn't have any friends, because they were only interested in if I was going out, and I wasn't going out. I was sort of quite happy not going out for 2 or 3 weeks. So I didn't really have anything to do or anyone to hang out with. So I sort of went to these meetings and sort of saw that there was a bit more than smelly old men. There were some nice ladies who smiled and were nice to me, and all of this was done in such a fog. I really don't remember making any conscious decision of, I have a drink problem and I need to get help. It was like, I'm sort of did this, and I sort of thought, well, I'm not going to drink today. And I sort of thought, well, I'll just go to this meeting. It was I just don't know how that happened, though. I don't know. It was a very bizarre,
surreal,
gradual. It was a gradual thing. And I went to these 12-step meetings. It was surreal, yes. And I didn't relate to anybody. I just didn't identify with anything anybody said. They all had these spectacular stories, and I just didn't have them. So I think I got to about 6 weeks not drinking and sort of wondering, there's a birthday coming up. I think, I'll probably go out to that and have a drink, and, And I remember being in this meeting, and I'll never forget this because it changed my life. There was this guy, and he started talking about fear. And he started talking about fear in a way that I'd never heard anyone in my whole life talk about fear. And he talked about how he was frightened of everything and anything and nothing. And he was frightened of what people thought of him. And he was frightened of not being good enough. And he was frightened of not being loved. And a fear had governed his whole life. And alcohol took the edge off that. And I think that was my lightning bolt moment. I just sat there and thought, oh my God, I thought I was the only one. I really did. I really thought I was the only one. And then I realized I was sitting in a room full of people who felt exactly the same way. And I was so fucking relieved. I was so relieved. It was like it hit me between the eyes. I'm an alcoholic and I need to not drink and do this program thing people keep talking about. For me personally, it was the best news I ever had because I'd spent 10 years looking for a solution to my problem. But here was the thing, I didn't know what my problem was. And until you know what your problem is, and for me it wasn't depression or anxiety, they were side effects. Until I knew that I was an alcoholic, I couldn't embark on the solution. So once I had that clarity that it wasn't about I didn't have a DUI or hadn't been fired or divorced or arrested or anything like that, that it was actually an internal condition. It was a spiritual condition that I deeply related to. That was my internal experience. I was like, sign me up. Where do I start? Get me going. I just want to do this stuff. Let's roll. And that just changed everything. I just threw myself into it, got a sponsor, as they say, and did all of the steps, did this work on myself, and my life just got considerably better.
Real quick, because we're delving into your journey into recovery, I want to hear that rock bottom moment about the suicide.
I don't know if that didn't really feel like a rock bottom for me. I think that was about 18 months before I got sober. So I was doing the whole absolutely convinced a boyfriend is the solution, and sort of had this sort of 3-week cycle of dating someone. At about the 3-week point, they would realize I was a lunatic and they would run for the hills. And I would be like suicidally depressed because I thought we were going to get married. And it was just awful. And I just would do that continuously. And it was a 3-day weekend in London. And I had this boyfriend. I thought, that's it. I'm going to get married. Everything's going to be great. And just right before the weekend, he ran for the hills. And I had this whole 3 days with just nothing planned. I don't know about you, but I remember for a long time, I was terrified of weekends, like terrified of all of this time to fill, either drunk and in early sobriety. They used to really scare me as well. But all of a sudden, I had these 3 days. I'd isolated myself. I didn't really have any friends around me. Didn't have anything to do, no one to see, nowhere to go, nothing. And 3 days, I didn't know what to do and I was terrified. So I woke up on the Saturday morning, thought I have to go and get some wine because it's all right because it's a 3-day weekend or some ridiculous rationalization.
Right.
So I sort of drank all day and felt more and more sorry for myself. And it got to the evening, and I just thought, fuck it, I'm going to take an overdose because I'm just nobody cares and fuck it, that's what I'm going to do. It was a sort of like, I don't know what to do next to stop the insanity in my head. I need to switch it off because the alcohol's not working. It's just like I'm drunk, but the insanity in my head is still there and I need that to stop. So I took all my antidepressants and I laid down on my bed and I waited for something really dramatic to happen. And an hour later, nothing had happened. I was still lying there and I thought, no, I don't want to do this. I did. So I called an ambulance. I think an ambulance must have come. I went to the hospital. Now, going to a hospital in England on the Saturday night of a 3-day weekend is not a good idea.
No. Oh
absolutely
God.
Packed with drunk people. It's packed. They've cut themselves. They've fallen over. They've been glassed. It's just like absolutely full of drunk people misbehaving while nurses chase them around trying to get them to sit down and administer some first aid.
I'm picturing it.
Yeah. So at this point, I was so glad to be out and around people. I was cheered up. It cheered me up immensely to be there, and got this very grumpy nurse who gave me this black tar stuff to drink and sort of was not very nice to me. And So, I thought, oh, okay. And I thought they were going to pump my stomach. I thought I was a bit disappointed they didn't. I remember there was a guy in the bed next to me being glassed in a bar, and I started chatting to him and sort of thought, oh, he's quite nice, and as alcoholics do.
Wait a minute. You said he got glassed?
Yeah, someone put with a bottle, someone put a bottle in his face.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and he was being stitched up. And,
he was being stitched up, and you thought, wow, this would be a nice opportunity to pick up on somebody?
I thought he was eligible. Are you kidding? He had a pulse. He looked at me. What more?
Oh, my.
Possibly wrong. And I remember the nurse told me off. She told me off, and I felt really embarrassed. After a while, they take you to a ward. And at this point, I was like hungover and tired, and you can't sleep on a ward. And there's old ladies falling out of bed and all sorts going on. And I just thought, this was a terrible idea. I just want to go home. So I just left. Just went home. I fell asleep, woke up a few hours later with one of my friends banging on the door because I'd given them as my next of kin, so I certainly wasn't going to give a family member. And hysterical, the police had contacted them because I just walked out of the hospital and not told anybody, and they thought I'd gone to jump off a bridge somewhere. And I just got a bit fed up and gone home. Typical alcoholic, absolutely no consideration at all toward anybody else.
Of course.
All the people I inconvenienced that night, I mean, it's just absurd. And I just felt really sheepish and like it was just stupid. It wasn't a big deal. And yeah, that really wasn't a rock bottom. It was just another like desperate attempt to change things. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Like there's so much of your story where I'm sitting here, well, this is just the female version of my story.
Yeah.
It's exactly reminiscent, and you wake up one day and you think it's a lot easier to just end it than to put in all the work that it's going to take for me to get sober.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, and I wasn't even thinking about getting sober. I really didn't think alcohol was my problem. I thought I had this rare mental health condition that nobody else in the world had. And I just didn't know how to stop it. And that was kind of, I mean, I could have been successful. People are by accident. They don't mean it, and they are. And they do end their lives. And, God, I'm so bloody grateful that I did call an ambulance and I did get help and all of that kind of stuff. Beautiful.
So now, thank you, because that is a great story. And my favorite part is trying to hook up in. Yeah. And that is the best part of the story, because that's addiction at its finest.
Oh, yeah.
That's textbook, like, oh, my God, I want to end it all. I can't take it anymore. Hey, how you doing?
You're the one I've been looking for.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow. Listen, if newcomers can't resonate with this, they're not alcoholics. They're not drug addicts. I get it. So now let's jump into, early sobriety, and you got a sponsor and you started working the steps and you jumped in with both feet. So yeah, tell us about that first year and what you went through.
It was just so nice to feel connected to people again and feel part of. And I had that real sense of, I found my people and belonging and all of that kind of, just beginning to that kind of fog lifting and being able to see things differently, all of that kind of stuff. And just all these things sort of being illuminated for me. And, I just kind of really, my life was about working and studying and, hanging out with people in recovery and doing recovery things and really all of that kind of stuff. And, my life just got better. It will get better for us when we stop drinking, even if we do nothing else for a short while, just because, not being hungover and just being able to get a bit more organized. I mean, that's not going to last forever, but, just physically felt better and all that kind of stuff. And I was about 2.5 years sober, and, I got a, career instead of a job and somewhere to live and a car and friends and all that kind of stuff. And that nagging emptiness that had been inside of me my entire life was still there. It was certainly less, and it certainly was less painful. My panic attacks had pretty much disappeared, but I still had this kind of darkness inside of me. And it really came out in my extremely dysfunctional behavior with relationships. And I've seen this a lot in recovery. My relationships during drinking were all highly dysfunctional. And that didn't change when I got sober. I was still very, very much under the belief that the right relationship would fix me. And, I just really wanted a boyfriend. I really just wanted to be loved. And I did feel quite a bit better about myself, but I still had a deep sense of not being good enough and not feeling good enough to be loved. And I dated a couple of people, and I dated one guy, and, thought, this is it. We broke up, and it threw me into this black pit of despair, which I always went into whenever a relationship ended, or, was in most of the time during my drinking. This just black hole of just desperate horror. And it really, really, really scared me because I was sober and I had worked the 12 steps and I went to meetings and I had a sponsor and I did all the things that everybody said I should be doing, and nothing had changed. And I was really scared because I didn't know where to go next or what to do. And I was terrified. And I realized that things had got quite serious when I was driving home one night and just this black hole had just opened up inside of me, and I thought, I don't want to drink. I really don't want to drink. I don't want to use drugs. I don't even want to go to the doctor and get drugs. I just know that today I'm not going to kill myself. And I was about 30 when this happened, and I thought, I can't go through this pain again. I can't survive it another time. I cannot survive this level of pain, of abandonment. Now, I had, by this point, qualified to be a therapist. I'd done a lot of work on myself. You have to do a lot of work on yourself when you're a therapist. And I really dived into the whole abandonment issues with my dad and, really understood so much. And in many ways, that even made it worse. I understood why I felt the way that I did and why I had dysfunctional relationships with men. I understood why, and I still couldn't change it. And I was just really, really scared. And when I knew that I was just making a decision to not kill myself that day, I knew I was in trouble and I knew I really needed to get help. And I did, fortunately, have someone in my life who was different, who was in the program, but was just different. And it was different in a way in that they were comfortable in their own skin, in a way that I didn't see in everybody. At that point, I think most people who've been in at least medium-term recovery realize that not everybody you meet in the rooms is as well as they could be.
Of course.
And I, when I first arrived, I thought everyone was fantastic and best friends and, and you have to have that awakening where you're like, oh, fuck. Stay the hell away from you. You just do. It's survival.
Yes, absolutely.
And I just thought I'd seen different people, and that I just saw someone who was different, and they talked about the work that they did in a different way that I'd just not heard before. And I was desperate, and I said, will you show me what you did? And they said yes. Now, I thought, right, I'll do this intense work. We'll do the program and, whatever. I know this problem is to do with my dad leaving when I was 5, and what I'll do is I'll do this, and when it doesn't work, I'll go and get twice weekly Freudian psychoanalysis where you're on the couch, and I'll do that for as long as it takes to just bash out whatever this whole deep abandonment issue that I can't stop. I'll do that. So I did this work with this person. My sponsor's a man. And honestly, that's because I couldn't find any women who had what I wanted. And I did this work and, I thought it was a good thing to do. Went through the program in a completely different way. And something inside of me fundamentally shifted. And I realized this when a few months later, I had a crush on this guy I used to work with. And we were good friends. And after a couple of weeks, I just was walking down the street and I thought, I just come to the realization that he didn't feel the same way, that he just thought me as a friend and it was never going to happen. And I kind of thought, I wonder what's wrong with him. And I literally stopped dead in the street. It was like being hit by a lightning bolt, because for 30 years I had been utterly and totally convinced there was something wrong with me. And I didn't believe it anymore. It had just gone. I just no longer believed that. It just went. And I was so shocked. I just realized that I just thought, I'm all right. I'd be a really good girlfriend for somebody. I wonder what's wrong with him. I wonder why he doesn't see that. And my life had, there was something transformational had happened.
Yes.
I'd had an emotional rearrangement inside. Something had been rearranged inside of me, because I would always do 2 and 2 equals 7. 2 and 2 equals I'm not good enough. You know, whatever you did, whatever happened to me, always reinforced that. You know, everything, you know, I could give you so much evidence. I can prove this is true to you because X, Y, and Z happened to me. It doesn't happen to other people. They don't get dumped like this. They don't have these experiences. This is why I'm not good enough. And all of a sudden that just went, and I just didn't believe that anymore. You know, I was the kind of person who, you know, I'd go into the office in the morning and be like, you know, hey, how was your weekend? And if you were at your computer going, yeah, it was fine, I would automatically think, oh no, what have I done? Why is it stuff at me? What did I do? And I would be obsessed with that thought all day, and I would all day try and get you to like me again. That's how I used to think. That was my thinking. That was what was going on inside of me. That was the motivation for a lot of my actions, was getting you to like me. And after I did this really intensive work, I no longer felt that. I would walk into the office and I'd say, you know, hey, how was your weekend? And you'd say, oh, it was fine. And I'd just think, oh, wonder what's up with him, and go about my business. Like, my thinking had dramatically changed.
Yes.
And it was just like that in every area of my life. Oh, what we are capable of when we are free of self-obsession, I cannot tell you. It just, like, my mind exploded. It's like my life exploded. When you are free of that bondage of self, that taking things personally, that just free of your shit, you know, your mind gets clear. You know, that is when everything really changed for me. So I had an emotional rock bottom in sobriety that was so much more powerful and life-changing and significant than anything I actually had when I was drinking or using. That was my turning point. And, you know, fast forward, that was 12, 13 years ago. You know, I eventually met a wonderful man with 2 wonderful children. I have a great life. You know, I have a home. You know, I have so many friends and rich connections. I never want to do that, you know, give that, like, my life is like a musical every day. It's just like, you know, literally a Judy Garland movie all the time. Because it's not, you know, there's ups and downs in life, you know, so many challenges. But I am equipped for the first time in my adult life to deal with that. I can feel the whole spectrum of my feelings, and I have an operating system that enables me to deal with whatever life throws at me, but more importantly, enables me to deal with how I feel, because how I feel is everything. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
Oh, I'm so pleased.
No, everything that you have just said I've been hanging on every word, because it actually was leading up to where I was expecting you to when you talked about the freedom of self-obsession. It's that the promises that we get in Narcotics Anonymous, one of the promises is the only promise in Narcotics Anonymous is the freedom from active addiction. And a big part of that is that fear and self-centeredness that we live in all of our lives. And then we come into these fellowship, we come into the programs, we come into AA, we come into NA. The AA, I love AA because it's got a bunch of promises, you know. And so when those started coming true for me, that was another aha moment for me. But all those cliches are so true. But when you do the next right thing, and the most important takeaway too for newcomers is that to this day, you probably don't even know what it was. You don't even know what you did right to have that culmination in that moment where you were walking down the street and you said, I wonder what's wrong with him, instead of, I wonder what's wrong with me. And it's just, you just keep doing the right thing, and you just keep doing the right thing, and you have faith that one of these days I'm going to have that aha moment that tells me I am perfect just the way I am. I am good enough. I am smart enough. And gosh darn it, people like me.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Beautiful. Oh, man. You have an amazing, beautiful story, Veronica. It is. I love it. I love it. Once you got rolling in there, you know, it was effortless, because when you connect with your recovery and you connect with that feeling that you first got, those aha moments, because it's funny, as you were going along in your story, I go, oh, she just answered one of my questions at the end. Oh, she just answered one of the questions at the end. right? And it's beautiful when somebody's just, their natural inclination is to be grateful and to recognize those moments in their lives that are life-changing forever. You never have to be that person that you were before. As a matter of fact, you are just not the person you were before. You are brand new.
I always feel that I'm the person I was meant to be, you know.
Yes.
This is kind of what I was talking about earlier, is I always just wanted to see what I was capable of. I just always wanted to see who I really was. But I just couldn't get to that person. I just didn't have the bridge. I just couldn't get to that person. But I really knew she was there. And to be able to do that, and it's a becoming, it's, you know, I'm always becoming the better version of myself. You know, it's never complete. But to be able to live in that world of becoming, which is just expanding rather than reducing.
Yes.
It's just, oh, it never gets old, does it? That feeling of just like, oh, thank God.
Well, I was just talking to someone today, as a matter of fact. I'm just going to call her out because I'm not going to use her last name. But Rachel, who has less than 24 hours sober, she reached out to me last night. And she's like, I need help. You know, I want to stop. I'm just desperate to stop. And so, you know, I get her on the phone and we start talking. And, you know, I ask the typical questions because I always like to walk somebody into a bear trap. You know, in other words, they're going to give me a bunch of justification about why they're drinking and why they can't stop and why they can't go to a meeting. And I just start asking questions until I walk them into a bear trap. And ultimately, what it boils down to is that when you spend all of your time thinking about yourself, it is literally impossible to let that sunshine of the spirit come in. You have an obligation to first go out and seek help and be with others just like yourself. And then once you are there, you are obligated to do service and give back. And it's in those moments when you are helping others that you forget all about all the piddly bullshit that is going on in your life and why I can't go to a meeting and why I can't do this and why I can't do that. Okay. You wipe out all the justification and the bullshit. And at the end of the day, it's very simple. I have to do certain things first before I get all these wonderful miracles that everybody else is talking about. Like this happy, joyous, and free, like being happy to be a housewife and take care of kids. And that's my life. And I absolutely love it. And for some people, it's like, well, where's all the excitement? Where's all the, yeah. We just went through all the excitement. All the excitement leads you into an emergency room, hitting on a guy who just got stabbed in the face with a bottle.
You know, that wasn't exciting. That was just drama.
Yeah.
No, what's exciting is when I pick up my preschooler and he literally throws himself at me. Or, you know, the first time we took him to Disneyland, or, you know, all the things that I never would have had if I hadn't got sober. Those things, you know, holding my newborns, you know, to me after I pushed them out. Like, you know, those things are just so much, you know, all of the stuff we had, that, you know, what we thought we had when we were drinking, where we thought we had fun and we thought it was exciting and we thought we had connection. They were just mirages.
Yes.
They had no substance to them. They had no depth to them. You know, that just your best buddy on the bar stool. The next day you can't even look them in the eye. It's just, none of it was real.
No, none of it's real. And also it's that perspective that we have. Like you just said, it's not excitement, it's drama. But you don't have the capability to recognize, you know, what it is that you're detaching yourself from. I'm trying to leave this whole dramatic lifestyle, and the disease has me convinced that I'm going to be missing out on everything, that the FOMO, the fear of missing out, you know, and today's the new slogan is for me is JOMO, you know, the joy of missing out. You know, I have no interest in being out there in the drama and the chaos.
Oh,
right?
my goodness me, no.
But when you talk about, you know, that moment, because I've been there, when your child is coming out of school, when they see you and they run to you and you're present, you are 100% present in that moment. That's a gift. Mm-hmm. That's why they call it the present, because it's an absolute gift. And when we're running and gunning, it's impossible to be present. You're either thinking about, you know, what train wreck you just left behind you, or you're thinking about, how do I get to the next party? How do I get to the next whatever? Because being in the moment sucks.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of wonderful gifts, just by making these wonderful changes. And I really gave her a good chewing out, but, we had a really good conversation. And what she needs to understand is it helped me so much just having that conversation with Rachel. I know I could feel it when I talked to her, how deep down inside she really wants to stop. She really, really wants to be a good mom, and she really wants to stop the drinking. And the disease has a stranglehold on her, and I can feel it. And the cool thing is that I gave her a couple of suggestions, and she immediately took action. She took action. And the bottom line is that, if you're out there, the most important thing that you can do, the minute that you recognize that you have a problem and you ask someone for help, if they give you a suggestion, take action immediately. Don't think about it. Just do it. The minute you allow yourself to think it over, you allow space for the disease to creep in, and then it just starts talking to you. We'll do it tomorrow. We'll get to this tomorrow. So this has been just wonderful, Veronica. I have loved every minute of it. I love your story, and we've got a lot of great suggestions already. And we're about to jump into the closing part,
Okay.
which I call for the newcomers. I'm going to ask you some questions that you already answered, but I'm going to ask you anyway.
Okay.
Because that's how we close up. And hopefully we'll be able to inspire and create some insightful answers for our newcomers. Are you ready?
Go for it.
Let's do this. So, Veronica, what was keeping you from getting clean or staying clean when you first got introduced to recovery?
I'd have to say nothing, because I just, I was so done. I was so sick and tired of being sick and tired. I would have followed any kind of basic instructions if you'd promised me at the end of it I'd just feel all right. So nothing was stopping me. I think it was more when I hit my emotional rock bottom, and then I had to really, at about 3 years sober, and then I had to do all this work on myself. What almost stopped me was the realization when I was doing the work, was the realization that I was completely responsible for the experience that I was having, and that I could no longer stay stuck in my story of what happened to me and what they did and what she did and why I was like this and it's not fair and blah, blah, blah. I realized that I was responsible for the experience that I was having, and that absolutely terrified me. Because once you realize that you are responsible for your internal condition and for the experience you're having, it's scary and it's seductive to want to go back to but my mum did this, my dad, and it's not fair. And all these awful things happen, and it's seductive. And I remember being on this kind of seesaw of whether I jump off the cliff or whether I don't jump off the cliff. But there was no going back for somebody like me. I could not go back to the place that I'd come from. So I had to jump off the cliff and take that responsibility. And I've never looked back.
No, you haven't. But I've been exactly where you are at in that moment. And for me, it was the most liberating experience.
Yes. Once you jump. Yes.
Yes. Because you spend all this time, all this years, all this energy blaming people, places, and things all around you. Mm-hmm. And then finally, you do enough work where you recognize and you realize I had a part in all of it. Mm-hmm. I had a part in everything. And from that moment on, you can make the decision on whether or not you want to walk into the next train wreck.
Then you realize, oh my God, then I have the power.
Yes.
If it's actually not all these things being done to me as what I thought it was, actually I have the power to change my experience, which is basically, it's not what happens to you, it's how you react to what happens to you. Then I have all of this power that I never realized I had. And that's liberation. You're absolutely right. And then the liberation and the freedom. And when we talk about freedom, when I talk about freedom, the freedom that comes is the freedom in our minds. It's to have that freedom in our minds, to finally be the people that we were meant to be. Because I'd never had that before.
Yes, complete and absolute self-acceptance and self-love.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. I love it. So number 2, this could be another, loaded gun question. At what point did you have a spiritual awakening, that aha moment in recovery when you accepted that you were powerless over drugs and alcohol, but for the first time had developed the hope that you could recover?
I think it was the first time I was in a meeting and I heard the guy talk about fear. That was when I realized I was an alcoholic. I didn't relate to any of the stories, and that's when I realized it was an internal condition.
Absolutely.
And not an external one. And that I completely, in that second, completely saw that I couldn't drink or use drugs. I saw that I had no power over them, and was like, oh, fine, that's great. I'll stop all of that then. I have absolutely no interest in doing any of that because I get it. And I had hope because people kept saying, you do this work and amazing things happen. So I was like, yep, sign me up, off we go. It was that moment. I spent 10 years looking for help and not understanding what my problem was. So to have it all crystallized, I was just relieved and ready to get busy.
Yeah. Well, I remember when you were telling that part of the story, I go, well, there's her light bulb moment, her aha moment. There it is. But, it's something that I really want to bring home to the listeners because, like you, it took you 3 years into recovery before you had that really big break. All right. The one that told you that, you're good enough just the way that you are. And then you know what? What's wrong with him that he doesn't see, the kind of person that I am? So you never know. It could be 1 year in, 2 years in, 3 years in. For everybody, it's different. And for many of us, we want that to happen overnight. Like I come in, I've been to 5 meetings and I'm waiting for my white light experience. You got to do the work. And then you have to have hope and faith because when you're ready, your higher power will just deliver it to you. So that's why I like to ask that question. People, you just need to wait and do the work. And number 3, do you have a favorite book you would recommend to a newcomer that you read in early recovery?
Yeah, I was looking at these questions, kind of thinking about this because I love reading. I'm a big reader. And since I've had kids, I think I've read about 2 books. And I can't remember anything that happened really. And I was thinking, what book did I read? And actually, it was a book called The Sermon on the Mount by Emmett Fox.
Yeah.
Heard of it? Okay. And it was recommended to me because Bill W., who wrote the big book, apparently was very influenced by it. And so I have to confess, I'm not a Jesus person. And I'm usually kind of put off by anything that sort of contains what seems to be just about the message of Christianity. But someone said, read this book. It's a really, really interesting book. So I read it and I just thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I recommend it to a lot of people. And then I was trying to find my copy of it, which I can't find anywhere, so I actually just ordered it again on Amazon. But I found a quote that I know I've underlined in it that I just really sums it up for me. And if it's okay, I'd like to read it out.
Yes, please.
Okay, so this is from The Sermon on the Mount, Emmett Fox, and it's called The Sermon on the Mount, The Key to Success in Life is the subtitle. All day long, the thoughts that occupy your mind, your secret place, as Jesus calls it, are molding your destiny for good or evil. In fact, the truth is that the whole of our life's experience is but the outer expression of inner thought. Now, we can choose the sort of thoughts that we entertain. It will be a little difficult to break a bad habit of thought, but it can be done. We can choose how we shall think. In point of fact, we always do choose. And therefore our lives are just a result of the kind of thoughts we have. And that's the kind of stuff that's in it. And I remember reading that going, like, my brain exploded. I was like, oh my God, I get that. My outer life is just a manifestation of how I've been feeling inside. No wonder it's been shitty. No wonder it's been crap. And I was like, oh, I don't remember any church person ever saying this to me. It's a book on metaphysics, and it's a book that really, for recovery is an inside job.
Yes.
And it's really a book on metaphysics, and it's being an inside job. So for spiritual growth, for really kind of wanting to just really get down and dirty with that stuff, I think it's a great book. I really like it.
That's a beautiful, beautiful verse. I have that book at the house. My sponsor gave me that book many years ago. He gave me that book, and he also gave me The Spirituality of Imperfections.
Yeah.
So those are 2 books that he gave to me. I started reading The Spirituality of Imperfection. And yes, the Emmett Fox book has been recommended a few times. I'm just not a reader, right? So I've been waiting for it to come out on Audible so I can download it and listen to it. I listen to all my books. But that is a beautiful, beautiful passage. I'm definitely going to have to give it another shot here.
It's a thin book as well. It's not big. It's really easy. And you can dip in and out of it as well. It's really fantastic.
All right. I'm going to give it another shot here. All right. So thank you. Thank you. That was a beautiful passage. All right. So number 4, what is the best suggestion you have ever received?
The best advice I've ever had, if I can reframe it in that way, is there's a saying that my sponsor has: if I'm okay with me, I don't have to make you wrong. And just, my life is so wonderful now, but it's not perfect and I'm not perfect. And I know when I'm not doing work on myself that I need to be doing, as soon as other people start really irritating me, basically my husband or someone I work with, as soon as I start just getting a bit like, oh, I can't believe they did that, or I can't believe they said that, or oh, who the fuck do they think they are? I don't know who I am. As soon as I start thinking that, I'm like, oh, I'm not all right. I need to just go and look at something. Usually I just haven't done an inventory recently, or I'm just not maybe taking care of something. Because when I'm all right with me, you can do whatever you want. It's not that it doesn't affect me. It's that I don't interpret it to be, like if my husband's having a bad day, I can just sort of let him have a bad day rather than like get into it and escalate it into an argument or something.
Right.
It's just different. It's just a different way of being, It doesn't mean being like detached or not like involved with people. It just means like not being attached to sort of outcomes or manipulating or controlling outcomes, all of that kind of stuff. You just can let things unfold and know that, just something bigger is taking care of things, not you.
Can you repeat that again, the advice?
If I'm okay with me, I don't have to make you wrong.
Oh, it's beautiful. Okay. I love it. And I totally get it. Get it. And I recognize that in myself, especially when I start talking to myself. When I start talking to myself about somebody else and having a conversation, right, back and forth, I go, yeah, I better get to a meeting or call somebody else because it's starting. I'm off center and I need to pull myself back in. So I totally get it. Yeah. And finally, number 5, if you could give a newcomer only one suggestion, what would that be?
Find somebody who has what you want and ask them to show you what they did. And I mean that like not the person who has the Mercedes, the person who is comfortable in their own skin, who likes themselves. And I always tell people, like, if you're looking for a sponsor, for instance, is interview them and spend time with them. Like, are they in a relationship? Is their relationship one that you would like to be in, like a relationship like that? I did that with my sponsor. I was around him and his wife a lot, and I just thought that's what I want. I'd really like to be in that really nice relationship that they look like they're in together, and that's what I'd like in my life. And just how they dealt with people. Like, I thought I'd like to be able to do that. How do you do it? So interview people and find someone who has what you want and beat a path to their door.
Wow, that is gold. I love it. That is really a great suggestion. I love it. And God, I was going to ask you one more thing. Oh, yes. How can our listeners get in touch with you? Please tell us your websites, the books, tell us how we can get a hold of you and all your media outlets.
Oh, my media outlets. I love that.
Yeah.
And I love hearing from people. So my blog is veronicavalley.com, which is Valli, like Frankie Valli, or Recovery Rocks. I think you can Google it and that will come up. And I'm on Facebook. You can Facebook me. I have a Facebook page and a personal page. You can get hold of me either way. On Twitter, Veronica Valli. I'm on Twitter. I think I'm on other things, but I forget.
No.
I mean, if you just Google my name, I think I come up in various ways. And there's a contact page on my blog. And I also love having people do my Recovery Rocks interview. And I'm going to send you one, so I hope you'll do it.
I'm in. Absolutely.
Okay, good.
Send it my way.
Because I love telling those positive stories. And so there's a contact page. So I'd love to hear from people and love to get feedback from my book if it's helped. That's means incredible a lot to me when people have really resonated with that. So,
all right, folks, go to the show notes on this interview, and there will be her webpage, Facebook page, Twitter contact, everything, the book. It'll be right there on the show notes. It'll be the easiest way for you to get a hold of Veronica. So Veronica, great suggestions. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Oh, this has been wonderful. You're just like the best host. I've really enjoyed the whole hour and a half talking about me. It's been great. I could do it every night.
Me too.
I'll call you tomorrow to
Oh,
talk about you.
I love it. This is fantastic. Oh, man. Okay, everybody. We have now reached the end of our show. Thanks for joining us. And as we say here in Costa Rica, pura vida.
Oh, pura vida.
Thank you for joining us on the Share Recovery Podcast. To check out the show notes page on this interview or to thank our guests for sharing their story, go to www.thesharepodcast.com. While you're on the website, don't forget to sign up for our free newsletter to stay up to date on the latest news, podcasts, and interviews. Want to be one of our guests and share your story? Then go to our website and click on the Share Your Story button. We share our inspiring recovery stories every Tuesday, so subscribe to our show on iTunes or Stitcher Radio to get your free weekly download. We'll see you then. The opinions shared on this show reflect those of the individual speaker and not of any 12-step